Hello, and thank you for joining us today on today's webinar, Mobility Today Global Immigration Update. Today's webinar and training is being presented to you by Stephen Rao, Director Global People Movement, and Satya Prakash, Senior Manager, Global People Movement of Sapient in India. As we begin today, I want to let everyone know that you will all remain on mute through the duration of the broadcast. The broadcast will be recorded, and if you have any questions, please post them using the GoToWebinar tool. We will answer them at the end of the broadcast. The presentation will also be emailed to you today. Thank you, Stephen and Satya, for joining us today. We're all very excited to learn what it is you have to teach us.
Thank you, Christen. Thanks for the introduction, and good evening, folks in India, and a very good morning to people in the US and on the western side. So this is Satya Prakash. So what you see on the screen right now is agenda for today's discussion. And what I'm going to talk about is, yes, on the immigration front. So basically, I'll touch upon the visa requirements for the Schengen, for the EU, Australia, China, and mostly I will focus on the assignment preparation, work permit and business visa requirements, documentation, challenges, business travel and compliances, determining wages and living allowances, best practices. And then I have a tax expert with me, Steve, who would be talking on the best practices on the allowances, tax treaties, double taxation, security and contributions. So here we go. So starting first on the business visa requirements. So when we say business visa requirements, the word typically says that it should enable someone to engage in short-term business trips to a foreign host country. So in general, this visa will only permit to participate in exhibitions, seminars, or professional meetings, and to go for a client meeting, to sign agreements, to understand client requirements, so on and so forth. The only key thing is on the business visas, any country, name it whatever, whether it is EU, US, APAC, none of the countries allow any traveler to do a work, whether paid or unpaid. No work is permitted on the visa requirement. So what are the work permit requirements? So similarly, each country, based on their requirements, they define permissible work activities somewhat differently, and they have several categories based on their immigration laws. So they may often give a traveler varying in type different work permits. So like one country may allow different work permits. They can be short duration, they can be medium duration, and they can be very long duration. So in some jurisdictions, a work visa may be supplemented or substituted by a residence work permit. And those work permits are usually cleared by the local immigration authorities in the host countries. So let me talk about the required documents. So what you see on the screen is what my presentation would basically enable you is you may not take any notes because this presentation is going to be shared after the webinar today. So I will provide you the best authenticated source of information, which is the respective government's websites and their immigration departments, so you can use these links, and if there are any changes in the visa regulations, they are reflected on these links, so you will find them very useful. So on the screen, on the first one you see is Schengen visa information. So for the Schengen countries, there are 26 countries, so they have the similar requirement for travel, up to short duration, and in a calendar year you may travel to the Schengen states for up to 19 days. And the first link which I'm taking you is their visa application form. So they would have a similar application form for all Schengen states. And similarly, there is a different form which says long stay visa application form. So like in countries like France or Germany, they call it a national visa or a work permit visa. So these are the two different forms which you'll be using for the people traveling from your companies for the various reasons. So if they are going to travel on a business visa, they will use the form which is for short duration, which is currently on your screen. And if they are going to travel for a work, then they'll be using the long stay visa application form. And now let me talk about the UK visa. So they have a standard visitor visa. Again, the standard visitor visa on the screen you see is all the eligibility criteria is what you can do on a standard visitor visa. Is the traveler can go for leisure or on holidays, and again for business. So what has happened is basically these days all the countries have changed their visa classification, and usually the business and tourism or the leisure is combined together. So a person can do business or leisure on the same visa. So what are the things which you can do on the business visa? So you are coming to UK for a conference or a meeting or a training, or if you want to take part in a specific event. So on the screen you see are the requirements from the UK government, and whenever there is any change, as I said earlier, they will be reflected here. So as I mentioned earlier is what you can't do on the visa. This is very critical. Whenever any person from your company is traveling on a business visa, please know do's and the don'ts. They are very important. So if we do not follow this regulation, then the person can be in trouble. They may be debarred entering the country, or there may be other repercussions which I'm going to talk about later. So again, coming to the work visas, the UK has several work visas, tier 1, tier 2, and tier 5. So on the screen you see is tier 1 is entrepreneur, tier 1 exceptional talent, tier 1 general, so on and so forth. What at Sapient we use generally is tier 2 intra-company transfer. So there is one tier 2 general visa and there is one tier 2 intra-company transfer. So both the visas are basically required. So let me just quickly walk you through what is tier 2 general visa. So the overview of this is there has to be a skilled job offered in the UK. So a company in the UK has to be there who is ready to give that employment, and that sponsorship title is called Certificate of Sponsorship. You may not actually get a physical certificate of sponsorship, but only a COS number, and which is applicable to apply for a work visa. And when the companies who are acting as a petitioner in UK, when they file for that, of course, at the same time, they have to test the labor condition in UK itself. So how long usually does it take? It takes about 3 weeks. And on the screen you see is this tier 2 general is up to 3 years, and the respective fee is available on there on the screen with you. So, and this visa, as the name suggests, is available to the skill knowledge which is not available in the UK. So I will just quickly run you through what are those tier 2 requirements for the skill list. So on the screen you see the latest skill list prepared by the UK immigration, and this is the skill list. So on the screen which you say is It describes the SOC code and description, job titles, and the minimum appropriate salary. So this will be very useful when you're deciding a role for a person, and when you're looking is what kind of roles and responsibilities that person may be having under that code and SOC code and description, and what are the minimum salary requirements. So even the minimum salary requirements are very critical. Until this minimum salary is matched, the COS is not going to be cleared. So it is not that we can offer any salary. Of course, the salary can be higher what is minimum prescribed, but it cannot be lower than that. So this list on the screen currently will help you know that if somebody from your company are traveling to UK on a skilled list, so what they should be getting. So for example, on the screen you see is IT specialist managers. So it describes your role as IT product manager employed by a qualifying company where the job requires a person with a minimum of 5 years relevant experience and demonstrable experience of having led a team. And new entrant, the salary is £26,500 per annum. An experienced worker, the minimum wage rate is 40,300. So this will help you in deciding the salary when you are preparing the cost for the employee. So this can be a very useful tool for you. So something similar again at Sapient, we do mostly intra-company transferee. The word itself clarifies is the person travels from one company to another company which is registered in the USA. The other work requirements remain the same. Again, for this category also you have to obtain cost and do the other processes as required. So again, this also can be for a shorter duration. It can be up to a year, or it can be a maximum up to 3 to 5 years. So based on the duration, again, the fee are decided. So again, how long can a person can stay is, of course, there is one catch to it. If somebody is really wanting to stay for a longer years, which is up to 9 years, then the salary really has to be £155,300 per year at least. And the other is, I showed you the chart, you can match the salary if they are going for 5 years, if they are going for 12 months, or if they are going for 6 months. So again, the eligibility, you can read it through the same, and the appropriate salary, I've told you how to determine that, and appropriate rates. So this link can be very useful when you're deciding upon a person, hey, what should be they doing and under what category they would fall and what would be the minimum wage requirement for them. So coming to the Australia, again, the visitor visa. So again, Australia has visitor visa, a different subclass, which is 600. And again, as a visitor, the requirements are as a visitor can only go for business visitor activities or to visit a family or on a tour. So basically, as a company, this is the appropriate visa to apply for if somebody is again going for a business meeting or conference or to have client meetings. So I will just show you on the screen is very specifically requirements for this visa category for people traveling from India. So these are the requirements. Again, the fee can be from Australia $135 to $340 depending on the duration of the visa, and this visa can be up there for 3, 6, or 12 months. And again, the Australian offers to work visa, they offer a short-term and a long-term visa. On a short-term, so these are the general information for the short-term. Where to apply, of course, in India, we apply at all the Australian consulates here. And on the screen, you would see the checklist of documents for the short stay, what they call is subclass 400. So these are the documents. The personal documents would be notarized copy of all pages of the current passport, including the bio page, one recent photograph. It describes, the page here describes all the documents which you may carry, and again, your activities listed on the screen, and this is going to help you decide that. So when you are submitting these applications, I would recommend that you check box all these documents so that your applications are through and they are not stuck into the process, because Australians, as of now, they have a huge volume of applications and their process time is slightly taking longer. So if your documents are all in order, and this document will help you prepare whatever are the requirements. So the basic requirement for all visas is always ensure the passport is valid. It is for India specifically, it is not a handwritten passport. There are enough blank pages in the passport. When we are providing photographs, if we have to, then they are the latest ones, but these days all the biometrics are taken at the offsite center. So maybe having a recent photograph may not be required in most of the cases now. So what you see currently on the screen is about all the business categories of Australia, about skilled migration, how to nominate or sponsor workers working in Australia. If somebody has to work in Australia offshore oil and gas industry, then the regulations are something different. If somebody is going to invest in Australia, then the regulations are slightly different. Then business owners visa, other temporary working visas, we have talked on that. The next country which I'm going to talk about is China. China is again still a mystery. The process can be lengthy, but I do not foresee any problems here. If again the documents for China, if they are complete, then the visa you can have it within 4 to 5 days. This is what it takes. So I will talk on the business visa requirement for China. So on the screen, what you see is this is the Chinese visa application form. Ensure that it is completed very, very accurately, because in my experience, the Chinese they look at all the details very closely. Even for people who are sponsors or the person from your company who may be going to visit a Chinese entity or people in China, their details have to be provided, including the mobile number, e-phone. So this form really has to be very, very accurate. And the best for us to apply for a China visa is to apply through their visa application center. And this visa application center has all the details on how to apply for a visa. So basically, we will be using both the business or the work visas. So those categories are M and Z respectively. So right now, I'll just run you through what are the requirements for Chinese visas. So on the screen, you see is the visa categories and the description of visa is what is doable on that particular visa category. So usually for all business activities in China, it is M visas, and for all business work, for doing work in China, it is Z business visa. So what are the basic requirements? Again, the passport, they need the passport valid for at least 6 months, 2 blank pages. Visa application and photo, as we have discussed in the application form. And when you go down the order, is they will write the documents, supporting documents required for each visa category. And let me just take you to what it requires for M visa. So information on the applicant, full name, gender, date of birth, information on planned activities, purpose, visit, arrival, departure dates, to be people to be visited, if there are any relations, professionals or personal, that has to be noted. So these are some of the information which you require. And usually when you apply for the first time, the experience is they will give you the single entry, and when you are applying on a later, renewing it, usually you will get the multiple entry visa. And the Chinese Visa Application Center has all the information compiled very systematically, and on the screen you see is a step-by-step guidance, and I would strongly recommend that you read and go through this. This is a very useful information when you are filing for any Chinese visa category. So again, you see is if you choose that you are going to do commerce and trade, which is a business visa and visa category we just discussed, you select this on the page and you just go to the next one, and then they will tell you all the requirements. Okay, I think I'm having some technical glitch here on the screen. This is not taking me to the next page. Let me try one more time, otherwise we can move forward. Okay, so this is not allowing me to go to the next page. So maybe you can go on this link and try out that, and this will give you all that information. Let me try for the work visa if it works. Yeah, so it shows you what are the basic documents, what are the supporting documents. So the supporting documents could be letter of invitation letter, duly authorized, or a confirmation letter issued by the Chinese relevant units. And this is for the work visa, so the alien employment licenses of the Chinese entity. And then, of course, for all work visas, permits have to be required. So again, the Chinese authorities will be issuing that work permit, and so on and so forth. So this is a very useful information when you are filing for a work visa or for a business visa for China. So let's see what has new come very recently. So in France, the labor code amendments, which has been done very recently, it requires that all employers in France who have petitioned for workers that they maintain additional records of the employee's timesheet, a copy of letter appointing a legal representative who has access to the relevant employment documents of the labor inspection. So it means that somebody from the Department of Labor in France can go to a work office in France who has petitioned for the workers from India, for example, and they have all the rights to ask for all that information about the specialized skills of that person, how much they are drawing the salary, if the company is keeping the timesheets. This is because when we are filing the petition, there are certain terms and conditions of the employment which the employer have to submit, and this work petition gets approved. So the authorities usually check is whatever we mentioned in our petition letter is actually true or not. So if certain salaries were mentioned, and they would check whether the employee is actually getting that salary or not. So is there any difference in terms of employment? So this is what the latest in France. And similarly, very recently, as of November 19, UK has done the same thing. It doesn't show up on my slide, but UK has done something similar. Something similar is Germany is again as per their Minimum Wage Act, which was implemented in the beginning of the year. They say that allowances such as housing and transportation costs cannot be included in Minimum Wage Act. So again, when you are determining the allowances or the salaries of your employees, keep that into consideration. And if there is any violation, there can be penalties up to Euro 500,000 or more, or the company can be debarred from bidding in public contract bids. Again, in UK, there has been very strict new immigration bill which gives so much power to the immigration authorities and the local police. So there are strict penalties for labor market violations, and they are rolling out rights to rent checks. This usually would mean in the beginning of the year 2016, which is February, is nobody would be able to take a house on a rent if they do not have proper immigration documents. Those people will not be even able to open their accounts. So the additional powers are given to banks and police to check on the individuals, and these are the authorities which will provide feedback to UK Visa and Immigration Service, and these people may take appropriate action, which could be seizure, search, cancellation of leave extensions, or penalties to the companies sponsoring these skilled workers. We had seen very recently is on the work visas, the UK had been issuing visa vignettes, which are usually valid for 30 days. The vignettes are usually authority for a person or a traveler to enter UK within the validity of the UK visa vignette. Although the work permit may be valid for a longer period, as we discussed earlier, which could be 6 months, which could be 1 year, 5 years, so on and so forth. And there were problems that people were not able to travel within the validity of their visa vignette, and it used to expire. So now the UK High Commission charges a fee of 12,810 rupees if the vignettes are expired and somebody wants to get a new vignette. And the other question can be, how many times can I renew my visa vignette? It is, you can renew it n number of times within the validity of certificate of sponsorship. Having said that, but also keep in mind is, of course, by law you can renew it n number of times, but if you are renewing the same application n number of times, they may ask a question, hey, are you a serious traveler, or what has been going here, or are you actually going to work in the UK or not? So until there is a need, do not renew the vignette, because it can be done anytime, and of course there can be a cost involved to it. Very recently, the Tier 2 review is being done by Migration Advisory Committee, which is MAC, and by December end, they will be submitting their review to the Home Department UK, and these are basically review of the Tier 2, what kind of salaries, if there can be challenges on the skill set, because when they were decided it was long ago, and they want to review because the salary structures have really gone up. So seeing this, as what they want to do is they want to reduce the number of Tier 2 people, so it will be tougher for people to qualify, and we anticipate seeing that the salary structure may go up again, but it will be decided by the Migration Authority Advisory Committee, MAC, and MAC is going to give it a recommendation to the UK authorities, and they will come with the outcome of by early next year. In the Schengen, very recently from November 2, the Schengen states have also started fingerprinting. When I say fingerprinting, is they have also started capturing biometrics, 10 fingerprints, and capturing the photo. This is mandatory. So people who had their Schengen visas, which were issued prior to November 2, they still remain valid. But when they will be renewing, again it will be mandatory for them to go through the fingerprinting. And people who have given and their visas expire and they want to renew the visas, the fingerprinting will be exempt, because in the system they will use the fingerprinting what is available with them for the next 5 years. In Australia, the immigration and tax authorities have begun data matching program for all visas for financial year from 2013-2014 through 2016-17 to ensure compliance with registration, lodgement, reporting and payment of taxation, superannuation obligations under the tax laws are fulfilled by all the corporates. And China is trying to open up, they are also trying to open up on specialized people. They also want some specialized people to be working in China, and they are kind of under the pilot program. They are issuing R visas. Again, people who will get these R visas, if they want to settle down long term, they can do it on this visa, and this will be valid for 2 to 5 years on employment basis. So what we saw was, again, for every corporate, business and travel compliances are so important. So we have to meet what are the immigration compliances. We have to see that we are meeting employment law and compliances. We are seeing that our employee who are traveling, what is impact onto them, and on top of it is employment and tax compliances. And if we miss out on any of these 4 fields, the company's business reputation can be hampered. So what we should do to save this reputation and see this smooth travel of our people from one place to another, from one work location to another. So monitoring and compliance is, what I would say is, have pre-travel investigation. See that whoever is traveling from your company, whether it is a business travel or actual work. So this is very important. So if you are able to take a call on this early, then we are saved. Based on the fact is develop internal company policies. Knowledge of both activities covered by the business visa and its limitation is therefore extremely important. So if people are caught working on business visas, for example, they can be arrested. they can be debarred from future travel, or the organization can be penalized. So before travel, always review the process to track frequent international business travel and see that any incorrect or lack of permission is not there, because this can open up to fines, deportation, and I said is there is a reputational risk resulting in loss of business and profit. So have a policy on international travel program development, understand what the requirements are, what top travelers, key business locations, priorities, what they are. Then mobilize, educate leadership on findings, use discovery data, vendor support, business needs, leadership input, traveler profiles to develop and implement processes. Integrate is debrief and formalize travel policy. Educate all employees. This is a must, because many times employees are not clear, they are not the experts. For them is the only thing they are traveling, and whatever they are doing is a company's requirement. But as a mobility people, they have to take care that there is no misuse in the travel category, and they are doing whatever is desired out of them on a proper visa and a category. And again, technology is very important. So we can see is there a technology available which can help in determining all this, whether they can track all the travelers, whether they can decide is who would qualify on a work visa, or what are the minimum salaries or benefits, or if certain benefits are there and we will not be providing to our people, and again it can go up in legislation. So I'm very sure INSZoom also offers similar technology, and there are also technologies available outside also, so you may review that. So what I've been seeing is, again, based on the visa requirements, based on the travel requirements, every time it is a policy, we have to see compliances, we have to see that people are paid appropriately, and that the taxes are paid very, very accurately, and we do not do anything wrong, because it can impact the corporate. So now I will be handing over to Steve, who will talk on taxation, compliances, and what are the best practices in those areas. Over to you, Steve.
Thanks, Satya. So that was really informative, and I hope you guys would have got a flavor of what it takes to be compliant as far as the immigration system is concerned. So we're going to talk a little bit about, just hold on for a second, please. I'm going to talk about international tax now. Okay, so the agenda, so what I would not want you to understand is that this is not a comprehensive one. What I would want you to understand that this is just the basic, a very flavor of what the whole tax system involves. We're going to make it very simple so that you can comprehend as much as you can, and then if you have any questions, of course, our text will be shared with you, and if you have any questions, you can always reach back to us. The agenda of our discussions would be, we're going to talk about international tax provision, and key tax treaty provisions are there, and then we're going to talk about compensation, and then structure of compensation and all that. Whenever you're thinking about tax, and whenever you're thinking about the international tax relating to the employment, there are certain things that follow a path, and I would want you to understand this. What I would expect you to try to get from this discussion is the key questions that you need to take it to your tax vendors, because to get a grip on the entire tax system would take you around 10 years. And so these are just the discussions on just the periphery. So the first part is the residency portion. So as soon as a person travels, or you have a person who's traveling from country A to country B, the things that you need to look at is first is the residency. Based on the residency, you would have income sourcing as to what is taxable, what is not taxable. And then you would have to look at the domestic tax laws. And if the domestic tax laws are not very favorable, I would urge that you look into the income tax treaties. So this is, if you follow this flow of information, or this is the path of the information, I think you'll arrive at the key resolution. Okay, so for residents, what is the term resident stand for? So in each of the country will have a different law, and every law would be different. But what it basically has is a person becomes a resident of that particular state, either for tax purposes or for living purposes. So the concept of residency more or less entails that a person shifts his residence into the host country or the home country, and he basically derives an income from that place. So if let's say you go as a tourist from India to US, you stay there for 20 days or a month. Since you're not engaged in any work, you would not be considered as a tax resident. However, if you go there to work, even for a short period of time, it is quite possible that you may trigger tax residency in that country. So you have to know what are the tax residency rules in that place. Why is that important? Why is determining a tax residency important? The reason it is important is, once you're a tax resident of a particular country, you're taxable on the worldwide income. So if you become tax resident, let's say you earn income in India, in China, in Singapore, you become taxable on the entire earning, worldwide income. So as much as possible, you would want to restrict the residency of in a particular country. And that is where your expertise would need to come in. If you're a non-resident, then you're only taxed in the income source to that. So just hold on for 1 second, please. Apologies for that. So when you're a non-resident, you're taxed only on the income source to that particular country. So if you're a non-resident of that country, the income derived from that country only is going to be taxed. And then it also, so the third point is tax residency status impacts the taxation of an expat. So that is why you need to be very careful on allowing people to settle in a host country, or to let them be in the host country for only a specified number of days. You cannot let them sit there and become tax resident of the host country. It is quite possible that if you are a resident of two countries, then your income might be taxable in both the countries. If you become a resident of the two countries, you have provisions in the income tax treaty to break the residency of one country and become a resident of one country and non-resident of the other. To break the residency, the basic elements that you need is, again, you need to read through the treaty, but more or less it talks about where is your permanent home. Is a permanent home in the home location or host location? It is possible that you might have a permanent home in India, and since you would have spent 7-8 years in the US, you might have a house in the US as well. If that is the case, then you need to look for further details. Where is the person's economic relationship? Where does the family live? What is his habitual abode? Does he spend more time in India or more time in the US? Or which country is the person national of? And if none of these things are able to determine if a person is a resident of one country or the other, then the countries can decide by mutual agreement as to where his residency would lie. And the reason why we would want to go through all that length is to make sure that a person becomes resident in a country which has more favorable tax laws. So remember always that if you're a tax resident, you're taxed on the worldwide income. If you're a non-resident, you're taxed only in that country's source of income. The second part is the compensation. So if you look, so we're going to touch very briefly on the compensation. I'm cognitive of the fact that we have very less time, and I would want to open the floor for a lot of questions. When you talk about compensation, there are two types of compensation that we deal with in an international environment. One is called stay-at-home compensation, or a hypercomp. The other is called the assignment compensation. The elements in the stay-at-home is basically all the elements of compensation that you receive had you not gone on an assignment. If you go on assignment, any additional that you get is called assignment allowances. And to give you a list, it has stay-at-home compensation may include your base salary, special allowances, you have it in India, bonuses, deferred compensation, that could be your stock options, share awards, or your group term life insurance or education allowance. So these are the things that you would get if you do not travel. It is immaterial if you travel or not. These are the things that you still get. That is why it is called stay-at-home compensation. The assignment compensation are cost of living allowances in the host country, or if you get extra housing or the family allowance, tax reimbursements, tax prep fees, hypotaxes. Hypotaxes is a negative element. If you get home leaves or flybacks, that's considered an assignment compensation. Or if your foreign taxes are being paid by the company, that's considered as an assignment compensation. And same treatment is for relocation allowance as well. So when you have to source your income, I mentioned that when you're a tax resident, you're taxed on the worldwide income. So if a person becomes taxable, the sourcing rules become a little hard. But if, let's say you're a non-resident, then the sourcing comes into play. The income can be sourced based on time, as to how many days you spent in each of the country, or it can be sourced to geographical basis, which is basically the local, your personal local income that you receive, or it can be on the alternative basis. I have never seen a case wherein we had to deal with an alternative basis of sourcing of income. It's always come down to time basis and geographical basis. The classic example for geographical basis is assignment allowances. They are all host country based. Nothing is considered as a home based income. However, and let's say you buy a property in the host location and you give it on rent. So irrespective of where you are, that would be treated as the host country income. So that's why residency rules are so important, and so is sourcing. Quickly jumping on to the other important article, this is called DPS, or Dependent Personal Services article in the treaty. And again, you would need to read through this particular article because the words may be different from the treaty of each of the country combinations. It basically, more or less, it talks about 183 days or less. So if you are living in the host location and you spend less than 183 days, if your salary is not paid by an establishment in the host location, or your salary is not cross-charged to an entity in the host location, then you might claim this treaty benefit and exempt your presence in the host location. So if you, let's say you go to a country, let's say go from India to US, stay there for a period of 170 days. Your salary is being borne in India, your salary is not being cross-charged to the US, and you spend less than 183 days, then you might as well become a non-resident, and claiming this treaty, we can exempt your income completely and say that you are taxed in India. Very favorable and one of the most used treaty provision that we had in the treaty. So that's all I have for now, and I would like to open up for questions. Christen, over to you, please.
All right. Thank you very much, Steve and Satya. I am looking, and we don't have any questions posted on the tool. I can unmute everyone briefly to see if we have any questions that people want to ask over the webinar. So let me do that right now. All right. So it's going to be a little challenging for me to unmute everyone because of the feedback that we get. We did have one question that just came in that says, this is regarding the ICT visa for the UK. So Swati, I know I can see that you're the one who's asking the question. Let me unmute you. Hi Swati, if you would like to go ahead and ask your question, I have unmuted you. Okay, and then she just asked a little bit more for her question. She said, this is regarding the ICT visa for the UK. It was mentioned if it's for 9 years.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Go ahead.
Yes,
Hi. This is regarding, like I said, the ICT UK visa. While we were going through the website, you said there was mentioned that in case the tenure is for 9 years, but what we have understood is that the maximum extension that can happen on an ICT is 5 years, and thereafter,
5 years.
Yeah, and thereafter a cooling period of 1 year applies to the applicant if he returns back to India.
Yes.
So
Absolutely right. Yeah, absolutely. That is, Swati, that is absolutely right information. But if somebody really wants to stay on and beat that cooling off period is, then the salary has to be, if the salary is 155,800 something plus, then of course, so if you are really being able to pay that kind of salary, then of course it can be a possibility. But usually, yes, what you said is absolutely correct, because for usually people in ICT, the usual salaries would range around somewhere between 30K to somewhere around 50K. So if the companies are willing to pay that kind of a salary, it can be a possibility, but it is not a viable possibility. That is why they have kept the salary bar so high in that.
Okay, all right. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
You're welcome. I hope I answered your question.
Yes, yes. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Great. Thank you. And we do not have any more questions. So I would like to thank you both very, very much for taking the time to join us today to teach us on the global mobility, global immigration updates, and with the tax implications. We appreciate it. We wish everybody an excellent week. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you.